Yeah, it sort of works. Michael Keaton played a good grieving husband trying to do anything to get his dead wife back, and then the ghosts kill him. Old school horror about scary monsters that hid in your wardrobe, or closet if you're American. And at the end the guy succeeds by kicking the Boogeyman in the face. The question we all asked was, why couldn't you have done that in the first place? At last he turns into Darth Vader, and it's only taken nearly 30 years by this point for George Lucas to finish this damn saga. The story's a bit crap and laboured by this point. Lightsaber battles are alright though. The story is apparently based on the true events of a demonic possession of a teenage girl. It's very well filmed, but didn't really develop any of the characters whatsoever. Not scary for me personally. My arm twitched towards my beverage when she opened her mouth really wide for the first time, when she was doing the whole rigor mortis thing on the floor, but that was it. Spark of genius is still in these animations, but it was just too long for Wallace and Gromit. A Matter of Loath and Death was much, much better. The Brown Death Coil for this film franchise starts after this film. Saw this at Christmas 2 years ago. Yeah, it's pretty good. More from the Underworld universe with mega werewolves, a mega vampire and an immortal Derek Jacobi. However, the ending was a bit predictable. A dark portrayal of what British society will become like in the future if we voted for extreme parties. Because we're fed up of empty promises and all the lies from the other politicians, perhaps. Please end now. Adapted from the video game franchise, the nightmare world of Silent Hill was done as properly as humanly possible, and it is phenomenal. Another one of my favourite films of this decade. A good conversion from book to film, and very good use of locations, but to me and some who've read the book, half the story was missing. Universally hated by critics and absolutely loved by me, it's a bit slow to begin with, but the film is without doubt one of my favourite films of all time. And quite frankly, fuck you if you don't like it.
What's hello chaps? Okay, The Queen. The film depicts the life of the Queen during the Diana tragedy in the 90s. You know, that decade where fuck all happened. Personally, I think the film shows a lot of sympathy for Her Majesty after Diana's death, because she doesn't understand what all the hype was about. So towards the end, she gives in to the people's demand, and there is a public funeral. Overall, the film is decent, and should get a look in when your grandma's around.
We've seen most of the story all before, but it's acted surprisingly well, and the fight scenes kick some major arse. Now, I enjoy a well-told story like most people, see my previous comments from Lady in the Water, but some days I tire of it. I don't want to have to give a shit about half-baked story elements and characters that are, quite frankly, crap. Thank you, Crank, for getting exactly to the point in exactly 4 minutes. Sometimes we don't want a backstory. We don't even need to know why the main character's been poisoned or why. All we want to see is Jason Statham on a massive action rampage. Hooray! The Jigsaw Killer is dead, and so is his protege. No way to continue! Or so we thought. Another film directed and produced by Mel Gibson. It was very good. Brutal, but that's how people acted and behaved then. So far as I know, they could have been all dressed up like Morris dancers and it would have been accurate for all I know. This film gets away with a bit more than a 50-50 from me because I personally like the Ghost Rider character. Yeah, so the Ghost Rider's got more expression on his skeletal face than Nicolas Cage, but it was satisfactory. Ridiculous at some points with the giant crab monsters and stuff, but on the whole it was still watchable. This film was very well done indeed. So much so that it actually even caused me to totally ignore David Morrissey's rubbish accent, which is something I can never do. Our whiny hero returns, except this time some black alien goo attaches itself to him and now it's turned him into a whiny dickhead. How the hell did this cost $20 million? About 80% of it was set in the 1408 hotel room. All the production crew had to do was trash the place. Scary arse and appealingly fucked up at some points, like the room hinting for him to hang himself, or the frozen corpse that comes alive in the air conditioning. Okay to watch 2 or 3 times, but swiftly becomes like the episodes you've seen on Channel 4, 27 times each. A film I'm actually ashamed to say that I actually liked, for one clear and blatant reason, that it was original and not some bollocks sequel, or remotely connected to anything. Ugh. The expressionless master returns in an increasingly bland adventure to find some ancient city of gold or whatever. Everything that happens in this film we've seen numerous times. Typical Blair Witch camera style horror. By the time we actually see the monster, everybody who was watching this film was already bored and couldn't care less about anything to do with the characters or the story. A good concept, but let down by a rubbish story and Hayden Christensen's dodgy acting. Parody films have sort of fallen into the void by this point and have no longer been funny since about 2005. Writers and producers, rectify this immediately. Good old Indiana Jones. It's not as stellar as the originals, but completely fine, but a bit ridiculous at some points, such as surviving a fridge in a nuclear blast. I can see a couple of problems with this scenario, even if the fridge was lined with enough lead to block the radiation. The absolute nadir of the decade for me was The Strangers. This film was the biggest pile of shit I've ever seen. The Strangers' budget was $9 million. I've honestly seen better films with characters that had more identity, personality, and it was filmed and made with not even half a tenth of The Strangers' budget. Much better and much darker than the previous Batman film. Heath Ledger was a great actor, I'm glad we're all in agreement, but stop giving him awards just because he's dead. Oh, fuck off. Yes, it probably was a good film, but just like Heath Ledger, rest his soul, stop giving it awards and saying it's amazing just because it's Slumdog Millionaire. I bet if the critics said it was racist and the most rubbish thing they'd ever seen, everyone would hate it. Have you ever watched something and thought, this would be a lot more entertaining if I'd recently sustained a massive head injury? Well, if that's the case, then Twilight's the experience for you. A good film, but you're pushing it a bit now. Please end here. Alright, but the ending made me want to smash the telly. Lens flares! Re-release it without 90% of the lens flares and you may still have a decent film under that. Sam Raimi makes a glorious return to the horror genre with this sparkling gem rising out of a sea made of sewage. Another rare film that, despite me knowing all the motions and cliches of horror films by this point, still shit me up 100%. Just like Dude, Where's My Car at the start of the decade, this film reinforces the lesson of what happens if you drink so much you can't remember for shit. Terrible, not as good as the book. I'd heard it was based on real people, and it was doing pretty well, even though it was a bit long. And then, I swiftly realised towards the end it was fictitious when they kicked the door down, gunned Hitler and started shooting him in the face. Oh, what the fuck are these films still doing here? It's outstayed its welcome, hanging about like the bad smell of a dismembered piece of an old corpse you can't get out the guttering on your house. Rumour has it, Saw 7 is in the works. This time it might be in 3D. Ooh, innovative! This isn't original anymore, at all. Developers of this franchise, go back to the drawing board and think of something new. Allegedly the biggest film of the decade, it's already made the money back from the budget. The Planet of Pandora is visually incredibly stunning and believable. The story was... well, it wasn't exactly rubbish, but some of us could guess what was going to happen eventually. Oh yeah, can we have a round of applause for whoever created that badass general, by the way? You must watch this film in 3D. If you haven't got a pair of these, you're in the wrong film. And if you missed it, or if you don't want to see it because you think it looks crap, then I feel sorry for you because you're missing out on true genius. Well, that's my long roundup of the last decade in films. Hope it was in 10 minutes or less. Of course it wasn't. I'll be back soon. Bye!
Can someone kill the chimp here?